SpaceX's SuperHeavy, a giant rocket booster, has been lifted for the first time. With the help of its colossal chopstick-wielding launch tower, the Mechazilla, the world's most powerful rocket is launched onto the launch pad. This is an impressive technical feat, and it brings the launch of SpaceX's first Starship orbital test flight closer. And there have never been rockets launched with this many engines before. So, stay tuned to find out more about it. After the launch tower's two massive robot arms flexed, the company's 440-foot Mechazilla tower lifted the booster high into the air, spun it around, and carefully placed it on the orbital launch pad. To make its Starship platform reusable, the space company plans to do this maneuver. Meanwhile, Tesla founder Elon Musk said that he hopes to have Starship launch 3 times a day 2 years ago. Furthermore, SpaceX moved its SuperHeavy rocket prototype, Booster 7, to its South Texas test pad last June 23rd as part of its massive Starship project. It is expected that the Starship and its SuperHeavy rocket will undergo pressure testing and possibly a static fire test at its facility near Boca Chica that would assess its ability to burn fuel consistently over time, and by no means a guarantee due to Raptor 2's developmental nature. It is said that this booster could bring Starship on an orbital test flight this July. SpaceX hasn't launched a rocket from South Texas in a long time. The company hasn't flown much from its launch pads near Boca Chica Beach since 7 prototype Starship tests were conducted from August 2020 through May 2021. However, there are some good reasons for this break. In the meantime, SpaceX is making progress towards an orbital launch attempt from South Texas later this year, so there's a good reason to believe it may soon change. With the launch of 7 full-scale Starship prototypes, the envelope was gradually pushed. A belly flop maneuver will be demonstrated during the vehicle's return through the Earth's atmosphere, beginning with 2 150-meter hops and rising to 12.5 kilometers in height. After a 10-kilometer flight, the Starship successfully landed after a flight test program. As far as the prototype of its Starship could go by that point, SpaceX has already pushed its limits. SpaceX had to develop the SuperHeavy first stage of the launch system because the vehicle was not capable of reaching orbit on its own. Because of this, the rocket would be the biggest and most powerful ever built. It would require many different elements to be completed. It all starts with rockets and ends with paperwork. So it has been more than a year since the launch pads at Boca Chica have been active, and 33 Raptor rocket engines were needed to finish SuperHeavy. Completing it was a monumental task in itself. To get to that level of production, the company had to do some work. By way of comparison, Aerojet Rocketdyne, once the leading propulsion company in the United States, aims to build 4 RS-25 rocket engines for NASA's Space Launch System each year. SpaceX now builds at least 4 Raptors rocket engines each week. Overall power is similar between the 2 engines. It was then apparent to SpaceX founder Elon Musk that the original Raptor rocket engine did not meet his requirements. Consequently, the company decided to delay flight tests for SuperHeavy until the Raptor 2 engine was ready. Then, there were 185 tons of thrust produced by the original Raptor engine, but at least 230 tons will be produced by Raptor 2, and upon maturation, its design should also be significantly more robust and cost half as much to build. The South Texas site has also been designed and constructed with much effort. With a height of more than 150 meters, it is used to support a fully stacked rocket during fueling and launch processes. The first stage booster will be caught with massive chopsticks, or the Mechazilla, as the rocket slows down near the ground minutes after launch. A total of 13 months were spent on the design and construction. To fuel the SuperHeavy and Starship vehicles at the same time, SpaceX had to upgrade its ground support equipment at the Texas site. It is more important to note that SpaceX gained an important decision earlier in June when it received vital regulatory approval from the FAA. As a result, the company is now able to conduct Starship tests from Texas. In addition, SpaceX rolled its Booster 7 prototypes of its SuperHeavy rockets to the launch site, indicating progress. On the launch tower, Mechazilla lifted it and placed it on the launch mount. What a sight it must have been to witness a rocket liftoff with 33 Raptor 2 engines. Then, B7 will be connected to ground systems after it has been fully secured by each of the clamps on the mount, and SpaceX can prepare B7 for the next stage of pre-flight testing. Further, Booster 7 will begin by igniting a few or just one Raptor engine according to Elon Musk. Although the plan could have easily been changed, SuperHeavy B7 will be treading a lot of new ground regardless. Then, the Booster 7 will also need to perform several wet dress rehearsals before actual static fires begin. It simulates the launch of an actual rocket, stopping just before ignition. This will represent a first for SuperHeavy boosters and a test of the orbital launch site. SpaceX plans to perform a full wet rehearsal by filling the booster with liquid oxygen and liquid methane over 3,000 tons. To pressurize the rocket's propellant tanks, B7 will use an autogenous pressurization system that replaces helium with oxygen and methane gas. This booster can be the rocket that lofts Starship into orbit if it survives all these potential tests over the coming days and weeks. The first orbital flight prototype is currently in doubt as to its status. Meanwhile, as of now, S-24 is undergoing the installation of its vacuum system. Then, it took less than half an hour for all three RVAC-2s to be moved to the high bay. It appears that they have also pre-installed partial TPS. While a meeting of these two has not yet been scheduled, given how things are coming together, we should be able to witness the union of these two stages in the not-too-distant future. Moreover, Musk said Starship will be ready to fly next month. We will have a second Starship stack ready to fly in August and then monthly hereafter. Whether SpaceX's development of a launch tower will work and enable the nearly 400-foot SuperHeavy and Starship stacked to rocket into space is still up for debate. It'll be thrilling to see what happens, and the stakes are much higher this time. At the same time the starbase undergoes constant traffic, SpaceX also begins stacking the Florida launch tower for the launches of Starships. And it has taken SpaceX more than 3 months to assemble and outfit Florida's first Starship launch tower with the first 6 prefabricated sections, after which the first stack can be built. As of June 21st, SpaceX was already stacking sections that had railings, elevator shafts, doors, walkways, hardpoints, plumbing, and more already installed. The assembly process should be quicker and easier than the method SpaceX used in South Texas, even though each section and all abbreviated plumbing and hardware need to be connected after each stack. In addition, SpaceX has made excellent progress with assembling the donut-shaped orbital launch mount and pieces for 3 gigantic arms that will be attached to the Florida launch tower of the Starship. Then, there were 2 sets for lifting and catching rockets and a 3rd set for stabilizing and fueling the Starship. The squared arm appears to be arriving at the Cape thanks to Dutch Payne on Twitter. Finished and installed, 3 arms will be required for the tower to be complete, and one of those arms will have to be connected to the ground supplies of Starship gases and propellants located at pad 39A. The reason for this is that 39A has never used methane, Starship's fuel of choice, so this step will also require a new tank farm to be installed and activated. In addition, there must be pipes capable of storing and distributing 2.2 million pounds, or at least 1,000 tons of liquid methane rapidly. It is great to see that SpaceX is making great progress on the starbase in Florida, but a lot of work still needs to be done before they are ready to launch. Therefore, if this booster passes pressure testing and possible static fire tests in the coming days and weeks, not a guarantee given the developmental nature of Raptor 2 engines, it could be that the rocket that launches Starship into orbiting for testing. In July, Musk, who is working to move SpaceX ahead as quickly as possible, despite his concurrent attempts to buy Twitter and unrest caused by his actions, may attempt an orbital launch. Then, hopefully, a second Starship stack will be ready to fly in August, as he said so. With this, I find this projection to be overly optimistic as usual. Nevertheless, the hardware in South Texas is nearing readiness, and the paperwork is being completed. Now it seems more likely than ever that a launch attempt will take place this year. Do you think this will happen? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And thank you for watching. If you would like to receive updates on Elon Musk and his companies, make sure you click the subscribe and bell button.